Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Life of Love. We have another magical episode where we're going to explore joy and just understanding what's inside of you. And I know that this guest is going to give us great insight on different ways to find yourself and to help yourself shine in the world. So I'm really excited to introduce Serge Prengel. He is a co-founder of the Integrative Focusing Therapy, an online training program. He's an author, a podcaster, and curious mind. And behind the scenes, he told me he's also a grandfather. So he's gone through a lot in life, and I'm just really excited to hear his insight, just to share his message with you guys. And thanks for being here. And Serge, thank you for having, the time to be on my show. Welcome.
And I'm very happy to be here with you.
I wondered if you'd share with my audience the reason you were drawn to, I noticed there's a common thread in all your work is a lot of mindfulness. So what personally drew you to the mindfulness work, and what makes it personal to you?
So it's a big question. Just take a moment.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Actually, the part of the answer is the taking a moment. I call what I do active pause. And my interest in mindfulness started before, but now I tend to think of it as very related to that moment of active pause where we just take a moment to say, where am I? Who am I? What do I want? And before we started this podcast, you shared with me a moment of intentionality. And I think of it as very similar to what I think of as active pause. So moments such as taking a pause, meditating, praying, are moments of getting in touch with what is vibrant and alive and connected to all that is vibrant and alive in the universe. So that's very powerful for me. It's not just down to earth, I'm mindful versus mindless. It's something that gives a lot of meaning and power in my life.
I love it. I appreciate that too, because it does. It settles the water when you just stop and say, okay, this is my intention. This is what I'm going to create. This is what I'm here for today. This is who I am today. And if anything steers you away from that, you can be like, wait a minute, I told myself I was doing it this way today. And it gives you your canvas to like start over or do something, differently, because you realize you're out of alignment. But you can't know if you're out of alignment until you pause to see where you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like trying to drive blindfolded. If you go into your day without any intention, you're just sort of bouncing around without knowing where the road is or what gear you're in.
So, when you mention driving, an analogy that I like a lot is the GPS. You set your intention saying, I want to go there, and you're driving, and then something happens and you veer off the road. And what happens is the GPS then, stops on its tracks and say, hey, I'm no longer on the road, which is similar to what we do when we pause. And then it goes and say, where are we? And then it recalculates the road. And then you can continue again. And so that's very much, what happens in those moments of active pause.
So active pause is a way you get to mindfulness, or is it an evolution of mindfulness?
It's both in some ways. It's a means to an end. You take a pause and you have a chance to see who you are, where you're going. But it's also an end in the sense that as you have experienced yourself and as you've described, being in one of those moments is actually a state that feels really good. And so it doesn't have that thing of, oh, one is a means and one is the end, but there's both and they're interconnected. And it becomes part of the fabric of your life when you do that.
So this is something that did you study this when you were going for your degree in counseling or psychotherapy? Or is something that just sort of evolved as you saw a need, or what makes it personal?
So this is something that I evolved over the years, and is obviously not concepts that I invented. The various concepts of mindfulness, of presence, meditation, contemplation traditions, have been around for millennia. So it's not to say, oh wow, I invented something. It's more of my way of organizing this information that is widely available, and what it means to me, and the language and the various connections that I have made with people who are kindred spirits and practice variations on what I'm interested in.
I know I see that over and over. There's recurring themes, but it's just how it hits you, like how it resonates with you. Like you might just say something that someone else is like, oh, Serge, I know exactly what you're talking about. Whereas someone else will be like, that doesn't quite resonate with me. But that's why we're all like activating things in other people, or it just passes through. If it's not fertile land, it's not going to land. It's not going to grow anything. But when you're searching and those receptors are open and you hear that right thing, it just, it's not coincidence, it's synchronicity, because you put it out there, you're asking for it, you're looking for that answer. And, so I think it's really important to have these concepts repeating, because sometimes I know the angels have to give me something like 5 or 6 times. I'm like, okay, I got it. they'll have a friend call me and say it. Then I'll hear a song on the radio and I'm like, okay, all right, I hear you.
Yeah.
So,
And I love the concept of resonance, because it also, it's an abstract term in the sense of, it resonates with me, but it's also very concrete. It's like that phenomenon of resonance as something you strike a chord, that vibration then resonates in another object, because there's that same that same rhythm, that same pitch, and that idea that it can be transmitted when it falls onto the right ground is very powerful and is very moving. How we actually can resonate with each other. Very, very moving.
yeah, I call it magic. I call it the gooey.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I do have some questions. My mind is spinning because I'm feeling such love and connection right now that we're sharing this, and I'm really excited about it resonating in people. So it's, I know that some of what you were talking about was when you do that silent pause and you feel what's actually going on. Is that a major, like, what are some side effects of the silent pause that you've seen in people? Are there detox symptoms, or, what are some major themes that you've seen as people implement a silent pause?
Yeah.
Or is it just that they're open to the gooey magic more? I mean, what is it?
It's all so many different things. So, for instance, let's say you're talking, and we can all go into yakety yak, just talk and kind of motor mouth or autopilot. And then, there's a moment you just stop a little bit on your tracks. And there is, and it's so brief, doesn't the person who's listening to you might be just saying, taking his breath or something. But during that moment, there is that opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, what am I saying? And then it could be, wow, yeah, and you get again a sense of what you're saying, and you start with renewed energy. Or you say, hey, wait a minute, I got off track. This is not the road I was in, and so you change the course. Or you just realize, hey, I'm just talking, but there's a human being in front of me. Am I connected to this person? And you pay attention to this person. You see the person is, say, frowning. It's, oh, maybe there's a communication, something happening between us. What do we do? So it gives you all these chances to adjust. And this takes just a moment, and it's doing something very ordinary, like having a conversation, But it allows you to recenter and reconnect.
And it's beautiful because I think that's just a simple human need, is to be seen.
Yeah.
And if you're in a conversation with someone and they frown, and they might not even realize, you could be like, hey, are you okay? Yeah. And maybe they just need someone to say, are you okay? Just to see them.
Yeah. Are you okay? Are we okay? Is there something I'm saying that, and so that includes the other person. It includes yourself, instead of just having, you're on a train track and you're going on a track and you've forgotten most of what you wanted to carry on the train, or you're on a train track and you're forgetting the other person. And so really that sense of reconnection. So it's not about a mechanical pause. It's really about that sense of really wanting to be connected. I want to be connected to myself. I want to be connected to you and to what's around me.
And I wanted to get into that with you. That idea of yourself, of you being connected to yourself, that you are completely knowing that everything in you is part of everything else, but you have to see what's in you first, right? And so now that I'm trying to say it out loud, it doesn't make much sense, but that internal divinity, that you have the freedom to be your authentic self. I wanted to talk about that freedom and how taking a silent pause can connect you to your freedom.
Yeah. No, that's beautifully said. Taking a silent pause can connect you to your freedom. So that's what you were saying is difficult to express, and I'm going to try to express it in a slightly different way, and I'm sure I'm going to again put myself in a place where it's difficult to follow. That sense of does being free, does being I'm a person means that I control everything, or I can do just about anything, or am I in a way just controlled by my background, by events in the world, by providence, just all kinds of things. The pausing, the moment of pausing, is the moment where you're not thinking about it in abstract terms, but you're getting that sense of, where am I? And so it's a little bit like, you're floating on the ocean and the waves are moving you. You're in a floaty, and the waves are moving you around, and you go up and you go down and you go sideways and you go toward the shore or away from the shore. And of course you can do something with it. You can paddle a little bit to help the movement. So it's really about that moment of taking conscience that you're not governing everything, but at the same time, there's some things you can do, and figuring out the sweet spot, between accepting and understanding, how much you have no control, but also seeing how much you have some control, and feeling it, And so that's a very beautiful moment, because it just allows you to have a sense of what it's like to be a person with, not totally separate, not totally in charge, but that little edge, of experience.
I love it. So you're connecting to your choice.
You're connecting to the possibility of choice with the choice that's not an all or nothing thing. It doesn't mean you can choose anything. Doesn't mean you can do anything you want. You can, I order the sky to become green. I order the ocean to disappear. No. But just, that little area, that where you are, and accepting and enjoying the part in which you are controlled by the universe in lots of ways, but the part in which you can intervene, and that kind of interplay.
I think that's beautifully said.
Thank
That
you.
just that resonated with me, and that's the beautiful thing about the give and go of a conversation, right? Is like you knew what I was getting at, and then so I think what's so beautiful is the way you said, okay, so you're in this, circumstances are coming at you, and you can take that silent pause to see how you are in that circumstance.
Yeah.
You're not looking around saying, oh, this person's mad or this person is, fighting back. And you can look at what other people are doing, but you're not. You're taking what's coming at you and you're going within yourself saying, how am I?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't need to enter that conflict. You don't even need to enter that, whatever chaos it is. Maybe it's not really affecting you that much, and that's okay. But own it. Like feel it for yourself. You don't have to have anyone else tell you how to feel.
Yeah.
To me, that's your freedom. That's your platform. You can say, okay, this is how it's working for me, and I can appreciate that somebody else is struggling. But that doesn't mean I have to, because I need to hold space for love and growth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If I go into the space of conflict and chaos, then I'm just adding to conflict and chaos. So to me, it's like the ultimate way to send a ripple. Like the water analogy, you're floating on the water, you're doing your little wave your hands to adjust to that wave, to get out of the big waves so that you can, be floating and happy on the ocean. But you see the wave coming because you took your silent pause, and then you just take your course. I think it's just beautiful. And then I did want to get into the ripple effect, because I read on your website about the story about the Jacob who worked at his father's theater. His dad was a Ukrainian immigrant, and he became a successful attorney, and he gave an endowment for the movie theater that shows movies about social change and awareness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was such a great ripple story, because here, and this is how it hit me. And, I took a silent pause. I was like, how does this hit me? And I was like, gosh, he had no idea. I'm sure he was sitting with his financial advisors, and they said, okay, well, do you want to put you can save money. If you put money in this endowment, you create a trust for something you care about. You can put money in this, and your investments will grow, and you'll have a trust, and it'll be a great thing, your legacy. And, it's a tax break for you. And, you have all this extra money because he was so successful. And he had the intention of theater being important in his life. And he had that love for, that he wants humanity to be better. But maybe he didn't have time to do everything in his life that he wanted to do to change humanity. And I'm sure he was involved with a lot of stuff being an attorney in New York City, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my head's like spinning with all these scenarios. And maybe I'm just making this up, that's
the spirit of it. It's not about the details, but the spirit of it is that sense of how, you do something, and then it leads to something else, and it leads to something else. And
yes, the ripple.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing about the ripple effect, And it's about life, that's about, that you do something and here's what could happen. And that's kind of wonderful.
Right. Now he has this whole theater, and he never got to see it in his lifetime, but here he just had this intention, And it's a beautiful thing. So I want my audience to understand, these little things that you do in your life. If you have these intentions for making a difference, for seeing other people that, more clearly, then, just those things that are true that you found in yourself to be important. If you commit yourself to that and have that energy around it, you don't know how it could turn out. There's just it's infinite possibilities. Create this container.
The idea that if you do something, then there is the possibility of it having a ripple effect. And if you don't, then there is a certainty that you won't have a ripple effect. So, not everything you do will have amazing consequences. But if you don't, then you really won't have any. And so that's a very motivating factor. It's like not the certainty, but the possibility.
That's so powerful. You have no change if you don't even try.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah.
I'm going back to my questions that I wrote out ahead of time because I don't want to miss anything with our special time here. I noticed that you do some work with relationships in a silent pause. And is the idea of having a silent pause, is it beneficial as a byproduct to a relationship, or is it also something like once one of your clients or someone you've worked with has learned how to do a silent pause, do they automatically have better relationships, or do they have to also work on the silent pause with the relationship?
Just as you develop the ability to have an active pause, it helps you in different areas. But in each of the areas, it really helps you a lot to work on it in the area. So, in some ways, the skill itself is, makes it easier to apply it to different areas. But generally speaking, we tend to have difficulty translating a skill to other areas. Because, for instance, in a relationship, one of the things that happen very often is kind of a momentum to go toward the preconceived notions. And the more we're activated, upset, hurt, the more we see things in terms of preconceived notion. And at that moment, when we're in a place of being activated, hurt, angry, the seeing in a preconceived notion feels like it's the objective truth. So your worst prejudices, your worst fears seem to be confirmed by what's happening. And it's very hard, even if you developed the capacity to have an active pause, a mindful moment. At that moment, you don't even think of doing it because it seems so obvious. That's what's happening. And what you really want to do is have a moment to stop on your tracks and say, I know it feels absolutely real. What's happening, what I'm experiencing, that say my spouse is really nasty, or, whatever else you're thinking about, and have a moment to say, okay, so I feel that, and it feels very true to me. But say if I look at her eyes or I look at her facial expression, I might see that she's angry, but I can also see a part that is, she's a human being who I've had this connection with, and right now I might not feel it. But, I do remember there's also that connection. And you can superimpose that experience, that embodied, lived-in experience of the connection, with the image of the person now who is angry at you and you're angry at her. But it changes a little bit. It just reminds you that what might seem totally true at the moment may actually be only a part of the truth. So it kind of expands, and then you have the possibility of reconnecting as a person to another person.
I love that. So it's, if you have that, you said active pause. Mm-hmm. When you're in a relationship, it's like you have that concept, but you have to go to the next level. It's like leveling up. You can do active pause with your pets. Maybe like the pets would be your easiest relationship And then
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
practice active pause with maybe the child who seems to understand you the best, because you can't always say just your child, because I know that I have two, and one activates things in me that I have to take a lot of active pauses. It's so funny. And you say, oh, people have their favorites. It's not your favorite. It's just the one that's just a little easier to be around, because they might, like, they don't hit you the same way. But the love you
Yeah.
feel is the same. It's just that, sometimes you just have a little more challenge with the relationship, because everyone mirrors things to you, and you might not like what that child's mirroring to you. And then, then you have active pause with your friends, and then a spouse, you have, there's a lot of times there's history. And like you said, you have to level up. You have to have a little more, like, compassion for that person. And you have to, like you said, go through those steps of saying, okay, well, this is just something we're going through. Identify that this is a little crisis, or maybe it's a big crisis, and come back to your love and try and understand, if they're reacting this hard, there's probably something underneath it you'd be kind to help them through, instead of making it worse.
Yeah. And, to also notice the way they are activated and the way you are activated, and is this who I want to be? Is this the way being in relationship that I want to have? And it's not necessarily easy, but it can be also a way of sharing with that person that, right now, I'm really so activated, it's hard for me to see you. Maybe both of us are. And, just if we own it and come back to it later.
I have, in my book, I have a decision tree, like a conflict decision tree. And it's like, you got mad. And I was like, can you think yes or no? Can you think of one nice thing to say about your partner? And if it's no, then it goes to this loop. Go for a walk, go work out. Can you think of one nice thing to say? If it's no, you go back through the loop. And if it's yes, then you can go through and say, how are you feeling? And because if you can say how you're feeling, it diffuses a situation so much. You can be like, I'm just really frustrated right now. And, this is how this is working for me. And they can say how they are feeling. But if you're just shooting arrows, you're just in a war, right? And you don't want to be in war. And just because you did it last week that time, the same, in a way, doesn't mean you have to do it today. You can take your active pause and say, how am I going to do this today? Because I don't want to relive yesterday. I think that's a huge thing that mindfulness can help with, right? Is like, I don't want to be the person who I was frustrated. I want to be my joyful
just
self.
In what you're describing is really that concept of active pause is there. So it's not, as we talked about, it's not, this is different. This is something that nobody else does. But it's just it's a way of putting it in a concept. So what you're describing, you're saying you have this decision tree, and can I remember something nice about my partner? Okay, so the question of I remember something nice about my partner is actually an active pause, because you're introducing a query instead of just continuing on the default mode of saying, "Oh, my partner is really is annoying," and so on. You just stop and actively ask yourself, "Can I find something nice?" Okay, so that's a perfect definition of that, of doing an active pause. And again, you take another one, you ask another query, and then say, okay, so it doesn't work. So again, you stop on your track instead of going down, the reactivity. You just say, is there another way?
Yeah, and maybe that adrenaline is something, you like. Maybe you can find out, I sort of like fighting, and maybe you need to channel that, take some taekwondo or something. Maybe your spouse doesn't really like that adrenaline, but you could, you could use it. There's nothing wrong with the feeling of adrenaline, but you have to respect there's someone else right there, and you don't want to, you don't want to be cruel or insensitive to the love of your life. Even though you might not like them very much at that moment, you still love them.
Mm.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about this. You talk about mindlessness and mindfulness. Is it a continuum, or do you think it's an on or off?
It's a difficult question. I'm going to speak both sides of my mouth, okay, and then we'll see where it goes.
Okay. No, I just wanted your insight because I was like, I wonder if there's like this, if sometimes we're in both,
Yeah.
can we be in both? I was just
So
curious what you thought.
at some level, it's an either or, because either you are just on default mode, not paying attention, yakety yakety yak, or you're stopping. Either you're in your biases and my partner is an idiot, that kind of stuff, or you stop and you ask, can I find something nice in there? So from that place, it's an either or. Um, However, you could also say that there are some moments where you're more mindful than others, more careful, paying more attention, more connected, calmer, but you're calm enough to have some of the mindful aspect. So this is where there's kind of a bit of a continuum. There's some moments when you can be more, some moment where you're not totally mindless, but you certainly could be more mindful.
Okay. And I loved how it was, I think it was a post on Instagram you had or somewhere. It was like, when you're training for the,
Yeah, yeah. So in times of crisis, you really basically will rise to the highest level that you have trained for. But you will not rise higher than that, because in a crisis, basically, with the pressure, with the tension, with the fear, you're going to just be able to be reactive, and you're going to have the ability to apply skillful behaviors or more useful behaviors to the extent that you have made them second nature, that you have trained for them. And if you have not, then basically you go back to your lowest level. And so that's why we practice.
that fight.
Yeah,
I love that. So it's worth it. This
yeah.
is self-care to practice the active pause. It's self-care because you're tuning in yourself. You're listening to your intuition. If you don't take that pause, you can't hear your intuition. You can't hear your guides. You can't hear your soul. Then when you're in a situation that's challenging, you can rise up. I always think of it as like this spiral. And if you can move along that spiral, you might slip down a little, but you're not going to fall to where you started.
No,
So I
no.
think it's so encouraging.
Which is really very nice. Yeah. When you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the practice. So how can people practice that? And so
Mm-hmm.
essentially, all you need to do is to find a friend. It can be your partner in life. It can be a great friend. It could be a friend who you're not that close to, but is willing to practice with you, and to have, what I think of as mindful listening practice.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, what you're doing is you say, okay, let's spend a half hour, maybe an hour together this week. And it could be in person, it could be on the phone, it could be on Zoom. It doesn't have to be something that is rigid. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice taking turns. So, for instance, if we're practicing for half an hour and you're doing the first 15 minutes, it will be my turn to speak and your turn to listen. And so, whenever I speak, from time to time, you just stop and you're summarizing what I said. And summarizing, so that basically you are engaged in understanding what I'm saying, not into your own head, not into your own thoughts, but what is Serge saying, you know? And I listen. And so if, yeah, you got it, and kind of nod, it feels right. It feels nice to hear that. And if you don't, I change it a little bit to correct it, not in the sense of correcting you because you're doing something wrong, but just because this way it helps communicate better. And at the end of the 15 minutes, we just take a moment of silence and we switch. And then you speak, and I listen, and I summarize. And so, what this does is it builds the capacity for listening to another person and listening inside. And, so for instance, I might be listening to you and you say some things that I disagree with. And it develops the discipline to say, okay, I feel differently, and I'm able to push that aside. And right now, to actually hear what Julie is saying and summarize it and give her the experience that she's feeling heard. And then I will have my turn and I will say my stuff. Okay. So that ability to have the pause and separate, what might be reactive to what allows you to stay in connection.
And just illuminate habits. I know that some people have the habit of jumping in, or, you grow up, or maybe you're at a big house and if you didn't interrupt, you didn't get a turn. There's all kinds of conversational idiosyncrasies, habits, and you don't realize you have the habit until you do an exercise like you just talked about. You can feel, you can be like, and I have more trouble if I have too much caffeine. I was like, but it's important to feel that and to know. And then you can say, yeah, I had too much caffeine. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in so much. I'm revved up today, So it's all about accepting and being honest, and, that brutal honesty, that authenticity is so freeing. I just,
Yeah. And I like and dislike the word brutal honesty. I like it in the sense that it really has a way of saying, be, no pussyfoot, just go to the heart of the matter. I dislike the word brutal because really the quality of it is really to cultivate a gentleness to it. And the gentleness that we can be in different places, but there is kind of a gentle way to make room for both you and me. And that's what makes it possible to do that.
I hear you. And I think it's a respect for the other person. You're not going to say it in a way that's going to be hurtful. You know, I guess I was talking about the brutal honesty of just expressing where I was. I would never be brutally honest, tell someone, well, you're just being, I would never be like, you're the biggest hypocrite I ever heard. I would never say that. I would just be like, that doesn't.
No, I think we're totally in sync in terms of what we mean by it. I'm just reacting to the word.
Brutal,
Was the quality of the word brutal.
Yes.
Is different from the gentleness, of that experience, which is that ability to be, the respect, the connection, the love can be palpable, and the difference is there, but it's cushioned by all of that.
Well said. I hear you.
It's not, cut dry, harsh. No.
I think that's a very good way to talk about that honesty. It's tender. It's tender. It's a tender thing because we're vulnerable when we're being really honest. It shows our deepest perspective, and that, if that's rejected, then that doesn't feel great, and then you have to look into your abandonment, your tendency to want to please and all those things. And so these are not easy things to work through, and I don't want to make light of them at all.
No.
Well, I loved our conversation, and we're coming up on the end, but was there anything, I will put your website on the show notes, but was there anything else you wanted to share, or anything that you're like, we didn't touch this, but anything else you wanted to end with?
So I will practice what I preach. I will just take a moment to pause a little bit to see if anything comes up. Mm, mm, mm. So what comes up for me is a sense of appreciation for the connection and the quality of spontaneous conversation, give and take, and connection that we had during this time.
Well, I honor your insight and all your work. I mean, you've had a legacy, and you keep producing, and I just, you're an inspiration. So I honor that in you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you for being here. I do appreciate you listening and sharing these episodes. I just know that sharing hope and love and magic in your life can change things. And so it's just so wonderful to have you here. Please go to my website and comment if you have anything to add or share about any episodes. My website is www.youneedapeptalk.com. I also have a free energy video on there that you're welcome to check out. So I'd be happy to connect with you there. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, every day is a chance to live the life of your dreams. So go get it and have a great day.